Would like to call to order the Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners work session on June the 3rd, 2024. Welcome, everyone. First up on our agenda is approval of the work session agenda. Commissioners, you all have a copy of that in front of you. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. I will mention that Commissioner Shue will not be with us tonight. He is recovering from some surgery, so I would ask that everyone's prayers be with him, and hopefully he'll be back with us at our regular meeting in 2 weeks. The purpose of our meeting tonight, in addition to our regular work session, is to conduct a public hearing on the 2025 budget. We have advertised that for 5:30 today, and so we will invite people that have turned in their yellow cards to speak for 3 minutes on whatever comments they'd like to make about the budget. I will mention that comments are restricted to the budget. This is not just a regular open public comment session. So we will begin that now, and the first card is from Tracy Dry.
Good evening. As you all know, everything costs more now. Groceries, gas, power bills, clothes, everything. I'm sure the county also has seen an increase in costs. The citizen taxpayers have had to adjust spending to meet their needs at the expense of not having things they want. County departments should be expected to do the same. Unfortunately, the proposed budget does not reflect that was even attempted. Each county agency and department needs to take a hard look at their budget and adjust their requests to reflect their needs and not include all their wants, so that the people who fund those budgets can afford their property tax bills. I find it hard to believe that every county agency and office is run so efficiently that there is no fluff, no wiggle room, no little bit of padding. In fact, I know that is false. There is extra, and I can tell you a few places to look. Yes, I want each department and agency to have what they need to function. However, I do not think the county should go about bankrupting the citizens to give those same departments and agencies all the nice little things they want. This board also needs to take a hard look at their own spending. Start by not overpaying for building projects. Why are we paying $40 million for the ACN building, which is slated to be the new DSS office, and then expected to spend around $30 million more to strip it and make it less extravagant so that it is more appropriate for what that department does? DSS is not big enough to fill that building. What else will the county use that space for to provide taxpayers with a return on their investment? This isn't Rome. Stop spending like emperors on things that will entertain or distract. We have enough entertainment and need less distraction. We need more talking with our neighbors and front porch visits, not for the sake of nostalgia, but for the sake of civil discourse and being aware, for the sake of ensuring our county remains friendly, safe, and affordable for those who already live here. I realize it was likely not your intention to wake the sleeping dragon, but that is what your decision to go ahead with the revaluation did. Clearly, we are not going back to sleep. Good luck keeping up backdoor real estate deals and incentives for wealthy developers whose projects aren't creating a single job in exchange for campaign donations and such. Now the people are paying attention. We see you, and we don't like what we see. Thank you.
Okay, our next card is from Martin Erickson.
Good evening. I want to thank the staff of the county for putting together this budget. I note that not every requested allocation of funds, not every position requested for was brought forward. It looked like reasonable estimates were made. I am proud to be a citizen of Cabarrus County, and I am proud that this budget retains our workforce and compensates them appropriately and poises us for growth in the county in the future. So I'm in favor of this budget, and I do not think that the new tax rate is onerous to most people. Thank you.
Okay, our next card is from Wesley Honeycutt.
Good evening, Commissioners. I didn't write down a lot of thoughts this evening, but I'm just going to share with you on the fly. I would echo a lot of what Tracy said. I want to put something into perspective because I feel like there's a lot of feel-good presentation of numbers that's taken place. If you all had postponed the reval, as people like me have been up here barking about for a while, you would have had to come here and ask for 86 cents per $100 valuation, up from 72 cents per 100. And I imagine that you all, as commissioners, would have had a much different reaction to that. That would have been an insane increase to be asking for. So while we're framing it as 60 cent per $100 valuation because of the reval, that's how much it's gone up. And I echo Tracy's comments that I didn't see anything in trying to sift through all the documentation online that looked like there were any efforts to cut anything. Your citizens are struggling. I feel like I've brought that up every month here, and others have brought it up too. I'm thankful that I'm not one of them, but I'm here for them. You all should be here for them. I understand that the county manager's role is to look out for the employees, but you all as commissioners are to look out for the citizens. And they're telling you they're struggling. You're talking about an increase in retirement benefits. I think 30% is what I saw, millions and millions of dollars. I get it, you want to retain staff, but the private sector's cutting right now. The company I work for has had multiple layoffs. Salaries are flat across the industry, but they don't have a taxpayer to squeeze. But you all have the foot on the gas, and the macroeconomy does not support that right now. You're telling me that there's not a single position to cut, but you need to add 25, the equivalent of 23 full-time employees. That doesn't make any sense to me. And while you may have a couple people come up here and support, I know that I've had droves of people in opposition to this budget that continue to reach out to me and thank me for my comments, thank me for speaking up for them. Because this is nerve-wracking. I'm a pretty social person. I don't mind talking in front of folks, but this is nerve-wracking for me too. Some people just can't get up here. They can't formulate their thoughts in a way to talk to you guys. But I reject this budget, and I hope that you all will also and ask where things can be cut. I get it that you said you're postponing certain things, but not a single role is cut. This would be the first governing body, probably in the last 100 years, to have no waste. If that's the case, if there's not a single thing that can be cut here. I don't know what all you spend the money on. I can't see all the details. You may be having bagels on the taxpayer dime every morning for breakfast. I don't know. But I know my time's up, and I ask you to consider that. Consider whose pockets this comes out of. Every dollar is taken from taxpayers. Thank you.
Okay, our next card is from Mark Ortiz.
Good evening. I would like to talk to you about the urgency of the housing crisis here. As you probably are aware, our organization, Down Home North Carolina, has been pushing for the establishment of a revolving loan fund to try to finance nonprofit organizations creating permanently affordable housing. I would like to impress upon you the urgency of the problem. I was just recently checking some statistics from the North Carolina Housing Coalition. You've probably already heard the figure that Cabarrus County ranks 5th worst in the state out of the 100 counties for eviction rates. You may have also heard that Mecklenburg is 9th. Now, I thought I'd take a little look at Rowan, just to see another neighboring county. Rowan has notably lower taxes than Cabarrus, and In 2023, Cabarrus had just over 4,000 evictions. Rowan, which has 2/3 the population approximately, had about 1,650. That's about 40% as many. As a per capita, if Rowan had the same population as Cabarrus, that would be about 2,500. That's about, that puts Cabarrus on a per capita basis about 60% above Rowan in evictions. So the problem here is fairly urgent, and there is a county ostensibly poorer directly to the north with lower taxes that is doing better on evictions, and I think this should be looked into and taken seriously. Thank you.
Okay, our next card is from Clarence Templeton.
Yes, I'm new here to Cabarrus County, so I'm looking forward to learning more about the county and making a learning relationship. I'm also with Down Home, and I've lived all over the country and all over the world, and it's come to my attention that there's affordability of housing here in town, and making sure that the working people here in this town can continue to find places to live, whether they own property or whether they rent. And I think that whatever the county can do to make sure that everybody has a chance to maintain a place to live is very important. Thank you.
And our next card is from Jeremy Gross, or Grass? Gross, okay.
It's my first time doing this, everybody, so forgive the nerves. But thank you guys for having this. I'm sure it's mandated, but it's wonderful. So I have general feelings about property tax rates. One, personally, I question if property taxes are constitutional within North Carolina, within the federal government. It really bothers me. And our founding fathers, the Revolutionary War was over decades. There were struggles and massacres, this and that, and then the war popped off. We won, that's good. But one of the things that they fought over was taxes. And my wife and I are both travel nurses. We just got back from working out west, and just the cost of living out there is high. Here it's a lot cheaper. We're in Washington State and Oregon. And what boggles my mind is how the cost of living in this area can go up. And considering the inflation going on throughout the country, the tax assessors for the county, for example, our house that we bought a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, was assessed like $30,000, $50,000 more than what we bought it for, and we already bought it at an inflated price. And then to be taxed on the inflated price based off of fair market value, but we all know that BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard are buying up homes and have been for years across the country and creating a renter's class. And this jacks up home prices, and then people can't afford it. Luckily, my wife and I were able to afford it. But I think that maybe Cabarrus County should consider a provision, one, to bar those types of companies who get money straight from the Federal Reserve to buy properties in Cabarrus County and then rent them out. Two, I think that it's wrong for the county assessors to use fair market value, because if we weren't doing what we were doing, we wouldn't be able to afford our house. And the fair market value goes up, our tax price goes up. I want to see, one, the elimination of property tax. I don't know if that's possible, but the sharp decrease of it. And I think that would alleviate a lot of strain on people. And I'm sure the sales tax here in Cabarrus County is Maybe it's gone up, gone down over the last few years. I don't know. I've been in and out of the state working. Lastly, it would be great if you own private property. You could have a couple chickens to feed your family. That would be awesome, for eggs, not necessarily for meat. Lastly, Christ is King, and Trump 2024, I suppose. Thank you.
Okay, that's all the cards that have been turned in for public comments. So at this point, we will close the public hearing on the budget. The next item on our agenda is a public hearing for a fire district boundary change. And we have Jason Burnett with us to explain the specifics of that item. Welcome.
Good evening, Commissioners. As presented at the May 6th work session, Fire Services is requesting to hold a public hearing this evening to move one parcel located at 4545 North Carolina Highway 73 East from the Mount Pleasant Rural Fire District to the Coldwater Rural Fire District. Current parcel is split between both rural fire protection districts of these two departments. The change would make the parcel whole for the purpose of consistent application of fire district tax rates, the Insurance Service Office ISO fire insurance ratings, and the fire response area. Following the public hearing, this item does require a motion to adopt the associated ordinance for the fire district boundary changes.
Great. Any questions for Mr. Burnett? All right, thank you, sir. Okay, at this time, I'll open the public hearing and invite anyone to the podium that would like to speak on this matter. Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing. And Commissioners, what's your pleasure on this item? I'm sorry?
Is this something that we're voting on, or was it just?
Yes, we need a motion to adopt the ordinance as described by Mr. Burnett or to decline it.
Okay. Well, seeing that we had discussed this in a previous meeting, I'll make the motion that I'll move that we approve his recommendation.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. And we move now to discussion items. First up is our opioid settlement strategic funding plan, and Dr. Elise Pugh and Mr. John Eller will talk with us about that item. Welcome.
Welcome. Good evening, Commissioners. Last fall, we hired Health Management Associates to conduct a collaborative strategic planning process related to use of our allocation of opioid settlement funds. And just as a reminder to everyone, opioid settlement funds can only be used to address the opioid crisis in our community. They can't be used for any other purpose. The reason why we opted to do a collaborative strategic planning process is to ensure that all of the strategies we had available to us as outlined in the state of North Carolina's Memorandum of Agreement. And this was a requirement in order to ensure that we had the full list of strategies at our disposal. And so with that, we hired Health Management Associates. After a 6-month-long process, they are here tonight to share the results of that process. So with that, I'll turn it over to John.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to be before you and present our findings to you today. And I want to extend, our welcome from our firm and the confidence that you gave us in this very important topic that we'll talk about tonight. I know you have the plan in front of you and hope that you'll read through it. I know that tonight you're definitely having limited time because there's a heavy agenda, but I want to make sure if there's any questions that we can either take those and come back with answers so you're ready at your next meeting to deliberate over this. But I wanted to first give you some quick updates on kind of where we are and what we found as we go through our meeting tonight. But first, I want to say that just in 2022 alone, 11 persons died in North Carolina each and every day from the topic that we're talking about tonight. And many of us have had family members, neighbors, church members, persons in our communities impacted as well. And what that translates to on an annual rate in Cabarrus County, at least from 2022 statistics, is about 74 individuals that we lost here in the county as a result of the topic we're talking about tonight. So we know that there's a crisis. A lot of communities are trying to figure out where do we go from here, and many of which have done what you're doing and have gone through a strategic planning process to really listen to the community, listen to providers, listen to residents to say what they feel like is most important as we look at the opioid settlement funds that are historic in nature. So as we talk today, as you've heard, there's about $22 million that will be coming to Cabarrus County, just shy of $22 million from the opioid settlements, the national settlements that have occurred. So what you're going to see tonight is, as a result of those dollars, how to allocate those. As you heard what Assistant Manager Pugh said earlier, these can't be used to supplant dollars. They need to be used to provide new and creative services in the county to deal with this topic. There's very strict requirements on how they need to be used that I know your county legal team and state office at the County Commissioners Association have been working through. So tonight, as we go through these, we want to show you a little bit about how we got here. And we had a community response team, and I want to thank all the members on this team. Not only did we have our team at Health Management Associates, but we also had a great core team here from Chairman Morris to County Manager Downs, Assistant County Manager Pugh, as well as our EMS Deputy Chief Kara Clark and our Sheriff's Office Chief Deputy Tessa Burchett. So I want to thank them as well for the participation that they gave us throughout the process. So how did we get here? So we went through a lot of community engagement sessions, and you'll see those here momentarily, as well as what's in your plan. We met with many focus groups throughout the community. We did a community-wide survey. We were able to discern from those what the community felt like were the best interventions from a lot of different options that you had to choose from, and we'll talk a little bit about that, and it's also in your plan as well. So I want to go through with you tonight kind of where we are. So we've started this process in January. As Dr. Pugh said, we've gone 6 months now, and here we are today at the point of saying, here's what your community said was most valuable to them. So I first want to state who we've spoken with. So in order to do this, the county is required to utilize these funds to go through, if they so choose, a collaborative strategic planning process, and that's what we've done. So not only did we meet with several organizations that are represented on many committees and work groups and boards in this county, but we were able to have focus group sessions with them to hear their perspective as providers. We also met with persons with lived experience to hear their experience and their families of persons who have experienced substance use and opioid use disorder as well, and then providers, which would include county departments throughout this process. So as you can see, we were able to go through a lot of different organizations to hear those voices. And based on this, what we tried to do was really identify, the themes that were emerging. And so what we identified is there's a lot of good things happening in Cabarrus County already, a lot of good things that you've started. We need to keep the momentum on those things as well. The residents that have experienced those services have noted that they're value added, and a lot of providers in the community feel that way as well. So you have a strong network that's in place. I know all of you are trying to coordinate those services better, and this strategic planning process will help with that moving forward. But we know that navigation and communication is always the key. And so that's a theme that emerged as we think about infrastructure and how to move this plan forward into reality. How do you do those things well and educate the community along the way and identify the crucial aspects that are working? So we know that MAT is a process that has been started. I know your sheriff's office and the detention center, as well as your EMS crisis response team, have been doing a great job of also utilizing programs to help with harm reduction strategies. And we know that housing is always a major need in the county, particularly as it relates to the funds that we're talking about as well. So kind of where do we go from here? There's two strategies that the County Commissioners Association and the TA team, as part of the settlement funds, that allows you to really tap into different strategies or funds, if you will. So there's an MOAA and MOB. A is a process that has a lot of strategies that are a little bit least restrictive. B requires more evidence-based programming as well, and a deeper dive. What we wanted to do was find the strategies in both MOUA and MOUB that would give you the maximum flexibility. I know those can be a little confusing. That's the way the state set them up, but we'll go through kind of what that looks like here in a moment as you see the strategies play out. So in your appendices in the plan, we listed out what the differences are between these and the strategies that a community can pick. From those, what we did was crosswalk the feedback we got from the community, and we identified from those two lists of options, A and B, which ones the community said were most important to them. And we'll go through each of these very quickly tonight just so you can see them, but I wanted to preface this for you that these are the strategies. So when we come back before you in July with a resolution that the TA team at the County Commissioners Association, part of the settlement, will require, these are the things that you'll be voting on at that time. So strategy one is really the strategic planning process. That's what we've done. It's required, and now that we've gone through this process, you have that plan, and you'll be able to see kind of now a roadmap to lead yourself forward as a community and as an organization. And so this requires the infrastructure needed to make sure you're measuring the plan, that you're reassessing the plan. There's an annual assessment requirement as well. So it's the infrastructure needed to manage the dollars. So you've done that by starting this process. The second strategy is evidence-based programs for addiction treatment. You can see, and this is also in your plan, but you can also see with this strategy that will be adopted as part of the MOAA strategies, that it also allows us to serve persons with OUD and SUD, particularly who are suffering from addiction-related recovery. This also helps you with mobile interventions that I know that EMS and others are interested in exploring further. And so as part of your community paramedicine program that you've already rolled out, MAT strategies will be part of that. So this strategy will cover those interventions as well. Recovery supports was another strategy that the community said was very important to them. And as we look at this, this is really the full continuum of services. So as you'll hear from a lot of the settlements, it's prevention, recovery, treatment. Those are the three large buckets that we're always looking at, so you can discern how to best utilize those in those different categories. So as you think about peer support specialists, those persons who are providing case management, walking alongside of persons struggling with OUD and SUD-related issues, that they're able to navigate community services, to be able to have warrant handoffs between existing entities within the community, both public and private, to really navigate the system so they can get the help that they need. If you look at early intervention, this was also a strategy that was prioritized, and this is really something that could be early in adolescence. So from the formative teenage years, from mental health first aid, it could be, community education and treatment. It could also be how to educate parents and families who who have questions about these topics we're talking about. So it's about more education, but also funding prevention in the community. And prevention programs are key to doing what we need to do to really get more upstream with these topics. This strategy will let you do that. In addition to this, what else? This would be preventing overdose deaths and harm reduction strategies. And so as we think about how to distribute from our first responders and being able to help persons who are experiencing overdose, this strategy will let you do that. So the treatment that first responders need when they arrive on scene is critical. This will continue to allow community outreach, but also those first responders to do what they need to do, but also continue to help with training, education regarding overdoses, but also the treatments for those things. As you look at strategies 11 and 12, also that the community identified, and that is the needs of the criminal justice involved persons. And that can be persons that are incarcerated or persons that are transitioning from detention. What do they need to transition back into the community? It could be case management for workforce. It could be wraparound supports. Avoiding reentry is the key. That's what you want to avoid. And so working with our sheriff's office to think about those strategies will be important. And you've already started making investments as well through the funding that you've already allocated for this even before tonight. In addition to that, also providing evidence-based interventions, things that can be measured, things that can be shown that they are effective. That's really what the state is looking for here, and this strategy will let you do that. So those things can be evaluated for efficacy and shown that they work. Also, the strategy C, and that's connecting people to the care that they need. I mentioned peer support earlier, but it's also recovery counseling. It also can include residential treatment as well. And so as you think about the programs that persons who are suffering from opioid use disorder or substance use disorder may need, this strategy would capture medication support and residential treatment and case management to help them with their recovery. And then we're getting on the home stretch here, but MOAB, the strategy E as well, is really how do you handle when you have a young lady who might be pregnant and also struggling with OUD and SUD related issues. This strategy will let you do that. It also helps you with children who may be struggling from this due to their parents' use as well. So not only women who might be pregnant, but also families with young children. These two strategies will let you put evidence-based programming in place to help them recover, to help with prevention, and hopefully catch children at a very young age as well. So what we're proposing in the plan is, what we've done is, on average, if you look at these dollars, it's about $1.5 million on average per year, and that goes throughout multiple years in the future. And what we tried to do is really look over the next 3 years, although these funds go through 2038, on average about 1.5 million. So what you can see is there are some investments you made early on. That's why the first years are a little bit lower, but we get back up to the average threshold on the latter years. But these are the strategies, again, based on community focus groups that include persons with lived experience, that include providers in the community, which include healthcare systems and otherwise, and also providers who are departments as well. Out of all the rankings and the surveys that we did, these were the strategies of all the available strategies that you have in the toolbox, if you will. These are things that the community said was most important to them. So with that, I want to be able to talk to you about next steps and how the implementation process will work from here. So once these strategies and this plan are approved based on community feedback, you'll also now have the ability to allocate these funds by category, by those broad categories and strategies that I mentioned. You can go through a process where county departments can be allocated who meet the requirements for serving this population. You could also go through an RFP process to allocate these funds based on the strategies that we just went through. But as we look at this, the next stage will be, after this plan is approved, we will evaluate anyone who is approaching the county, whether internal or external, to utilize these funds to help further the strategies that the community chose. And from that, the county would go through a contractual process to make awards based on the average amount that you plan to allocate annually. With that, there's a financial process that has to be reviewed annually to make sure the funds are being spent appropriately. And if they're not, there's a process for that. In addition to that, you'll have to do an annual report to the county commissioner's TA team at the state level as well. So when we think about the next steps, tonight is really reviewing the plan for approval at your next meeting. A resolution will have to occur in July to be able to cover the needed components of these strategies that we mentioned tonight. And then there's several forms that will be required to basically certify your plan with the state office. And once that is done, then the process for utilizing the funds can begin. I know we went through a lot. The plan that you have in front of you has much more detail. We did talk to the state TA team as well to make sure their feedback was incorporated, to make sure we checked every box that we needed to meet the settlement agreement minimum threshold as well. So with that, I'll see if Dr. Pugh has anything to add or if any of you have any questions for us tonight. Thank you.
As he mentioned, the next step is if you all approve the strategic plan, of course, that'll be on the consent agenda in 2 weeks at your regular board meeting. Upon its approval, we'll bring back a full resolution to you in July for your consideration.
Who is this, you said, you had mentioned a state TA team? Is that, and what does that stand for?
Correct. Technical assistance. Thank you, Commissioner.
And you had mentioned that there'd be a financial review every year of how we spend these funds. Obviously, you had mentioned that we're very restrictive on where the money can go, and this may be more a question for staff, but who reviews that?
The state.
Okay. And what was the total settlement that Cabarrus County was going to receive?
We are currently slated to receive between $21 and $22 million. However, we just received notice that there was another settlement with Kroger, so it's very possible that that amount will increase.
In each county that has received these funds, or I guess went through the state and then they're deciding how much goes to what county? Is there a formula that they're using on that? Based upon population, based upon, you had mentioned the total deaths that we had in Cabarrus County. Does that go into consideration when they decide which county gets how much?
Yes, that is precisely accurate, Commissioner. The state made determinations in terms of how the money was allocated based on the population and based on the extent of the crisis in that community. And so we were one at the time that had a pretty high rate of opioid use disorders and opioid use disorder related deaths. And so our allocation was fairly significant.
I see. Okay.
So how often do we get this settlement? Is this
So-
new?
There is a payment schedule, and it's already outlined on the state's website. So you can actually go, and I'm happy to provide the link, and you can see exactly how much money we will receive to date, over the course of the next, as he mentioned, roughly 18 years. To date, we've received roughly $7 million. Rosh can correct me if I'm mistaken, but we anticipate another allocation coming up this fall.
Okay. Besides this allocation, how much has the county been putting in this fund, or
No, this
to fight it? We haven't done anything in the past, just this.
So we have historically funded some efforts related to opioid use
Right.
crisis services, primarily services that are provided through CHA. But in terms of the opioid settlement funds, there's no required match, if that's your question.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, I want to thank you for the work that Elise and as well as John and his associates have done on this, having served on this community response team and sat in on those meetings. It has been a very thorough process, and I think that the number of community organizations that have been involved and have provided feedback and provided examples of experiences that they've had, and the list is quite long, has really been valuable to the process. And I will have to say that the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners has been one of the leading organizations in the nation to put together this collaborative process to receive these settlement funds. And as you mentioned, another one's been announced, and it would not be surprising if there are not additional ones. It is a tremendous crisis and that has occurred throughout the nation, and certainly Cabarrus County is not immune to it. And once these settlement funds were announced, there were lots of different organizations that immediately surfaced or came out of the woodwork, or maybe people that were doing work in this space. So to have this strategic plan that gives us a very methodical guideline as to the check marks. I mean, if someone approaches the county requesting funding, then we've got the litmus test of sort, you know, the work that we've done and the feedback from all these organizations to properly administer the funds. I think that we've talked a number of times about the SUN project here in Cabarrus County, which has been incredibly successful. A lot of the grant funding has come in to cover that effort. And so now it's kind of spun off. There are other counties that have sought them out to be able to start a similar type program. So I'm really proud of Cabarrus County's efforts and what we've been able to do in that area. And so thank you both for your work and your assistance on that as well. Any other questions or comments? I think that this will be on our consent agenda, this plan, and I think everyone has been presented a copy and what we've seen on the board for our regular meeting in June, which our regular meeting in 2 weeks from now.
That's correct.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is 4.2 from Juvenile Crime Prevention Council. We're happy to have Joni Bisher with us for a presentation to talk about approval of JCPC fiscal year 24-25 certification. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. This is a document that the JCPC submits annually to this. It verifies completion of legislatively mandated JCP's responsibilities regarding membership, written bylaws, and established external communications, and those are the attachments that you see with it. Every JCPC in the state is required to do this each year, and this document is to be approved through the Board of Commissioners consent agenda.
Great. Any questions for Joni? All right, thank you. I think you'll see in your attachments, there's a detailed list of all the people that serve on the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council. We periodically get questions about these appointments. And I think this is a very good example because it shows school superintendent or designee, chief of police or designee, local sheriff or designee, and on down the line. So most of these folks that serve on this board come from specific service areas. So does anybody else have any comments or questions on that? All right, then we will move to item 4.3 from Active Living and Parks, new pool contract. And we're happy to have Londa Strong and Jacob to talk about that item.
That's correct. Thank you all for having us here tonight. If you remember, we were here just a few months ago getting the contract approved for the pool. We were switching contractors. And the reason we're back now is because we were getting it on the fiscal year instead of the calendar year, which would make it much easier for finance, for budget, for the contract, et cetera. And Jacob is going to go into a little bit on the contract. I'm also going to ask him to talk about the first week that we've had the pool open with the great weather.
Sure. So the company name that we're looking at is our current provider. Like Londa said, we switched at New Year to a new provider. and now we're getting on a fiscal year basis. So the company is Swim Club Management Group. They're a pool maintenance, lifeguarding, operations contractor out of Huntersville, but they serve Charlotte and the broader area. I want to say they have around 130 pools they service, but we are their first public park pool operation. Most of what they do is swim clubs or neighborhood HOA pools. But so far, I've been really pleased with them. We've been open a little over a week now. We opened on the 25th. So we had the flood when school got out, all the kids coming out of the pool. So through the weekend, well, let me say, we have 150 swimmer capacity per day based on the size of the pool and how many lifeguards we staff. So through the first weekend, we were over, we exceeded capacity, not to say there was more than 150 people in there. People had left and we sold some more passes. So demand has been really high for the pool. And through the weekdays so far, we've been hovering around 80 passes sold per day. So even during the week, which we're open 10 to 4 during the week, 10 to 7 during the weekends. So still having high demand during the week, even though a lot of parents are working. So that's encouraging. And tomorrow, the Boys and Girls Club comes out for their first day of the summer, and they'll be here all the way through the end of July. So they'll be using the pool 10 to 3 every day. So far, I've been very impressed with Swim Club Management Group and want to keep them on board on this fiscal year basis. So this is a 2-year contract that you have in front of you. And the best thing about them so far, well, a couple things. They had the pool showroom ready weeks before our pool opened. It was the cleanest, the best, the clearest it's ever looked, which is very encouraging. We haven't always had that. But also their level of staffing. They pay significantly more per lifeguard, more than the other contractors we looked at. So they have better staffing. They are not short-staffed like some of the lifeguard providers we've had in the past. So those couple things play into the contract and the figures that you've seen. So yeah, excited to hopefully keep them on board for another 2 years.
Any questions for Jacob? Glad to hear that we're not experiencing the lifeguard situation as in the past couple years.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
All right, thank you all.
Okay, we move now to item 4.4 from Department of Social Services, Fiscal Year 25 Home and Community Care Block Grant Funding Plan, and we're happy to have Tammy Bayer with us for that item. Or we might have Kelly Sifford hitting for Tammy Bayer.
I believe, I'm not sure where Tammy's at. So this is the annual HCCBG program funding that we get through the COG. This is the Older Americans Act money. It funds a number of different programs, so in-home care, our senior center, some of their activities, nutrition congregate sites, the transportation to medical appointments, things of that nature, housing and home improvement where we build the wheelchair ramps and grab bars and things for seniors to keep them in their homes. So once that is compiled by Tammy, that is sent to COG for their approval, and they, again, tell us how much funding we get each year, and we're required a 10% match, which is included in the budgets that we submit to you. So all of that is in the package together. Have any questions?
Is this something that we have very much flexibility in, but or it has to be in certain categories?
So we do have some flexibility. It is limited to, there are a list of overall activities that we can do. There are wait lists for many of these services, particularly the in-home aides, that kind of thing, because it is very hard to get. They're used for adult daycare, so families that may be caring for an elderly one that can't stay home by themselves during the day, they can take them to the adult daycare so that they may work. So there's various things like that that we do with those funds. There is a little bit of variability in the request, but we would have to see if, in particular, if somebody was interested in a certain activity, what that activity is it permitted by the grant, and if so, who around here carries that out. Currently, the only provider that is not a county agency is Cabarrus Meals on Wheels. We do fund some of their meals.
Mm-hmm. And so the people that can use these services, is that, what are the qualifications?
For most of them, you just have to be 60 years old. Obviously, for certain programs, priorities are given, based on income and ability to serve, our ability to meet those needs. We always have a wait list for a lot of the services. We are required by that grant to, if somebody's over a certain income, to ask for a contribution to the program. It does not affect service in one way or another because we ask after the fact. They are told about it at the time of application, so they're aware of it. For example, we probably get maybe $500 a year in HHI, expending probably, that's around 60,000. We get about 500 in contributions from people. We have some people who come in once a month and give us $10. We have people who just send one check at, when we finish the service, so that kind of thing.
Yeah, and so on the congregate meals, is there any requirements on that for people that take advantage of those?
I think it's the same requirement we can ask, but it doesn't affect their service.
And so the last question, how would people be aware of these services? How?
So DSS runs many of the services. When people call in for assistance and tell us, they may call in and say, this is all the needs that I have. And we go through it and point them in the direction of the different services providers that may be able to serve them. So for instance, with the wheelchair ramps, those are part of the planning department. So DSS makes that referral to us, and we get in touch with them, and we try to provide that service if at all possible. When they're screening, when they come in the call, we have questions for them. There's a certain number, the application has some very pointed questions about ability for self-care, daily activities. So can you, take a shower? Can you dress yourself? Can you, can you cook for yourself? Those kind of things. So we kind of get an idea of what their abilities may be or what their needs may be, and we try to assist through the different programs. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. Any other questions for Kelly? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is 4.5 from Finance, Governmental Accounting Standards Board Budget Amendments, and we're happy to have Jim Howden with us for that item.
Good evening, Commissioners. The Government Accounting Standards Board established GASB 87 and 96 a few years ago, which requires us to recognize certain leases and technology subscriptions as debt payments, principal and interest. Currently, we record all those in the general fund within the departments, and this budget amendment allows us to move those expenditures to the Community Investment Fund where we record all of our debt. So just asking the board to do this accounting entry, approve this budget amendment so we may do the accounting entry.
Okay, any questions for Jim? All right, thank you. Okay, next item, 4.6, also from Finance, budget amendment for interest received on grant project, and it's Jim again.
Grant funds received for the PAVE project earned interest, and we're required by this grant to record that interest as part of the project. And so we're asking the board to approve the budget amendment, which will allow us to record the interest as revenue and expenditure so we can then forward the funds to the subrecipient.
Any questions on that item? Okay, and you've got the next one as well.
Yes, sir. At the end of each fiscal year, the Finance Department evaluates all the funds and accounts to make sure expenditures does not exceed the budget. After our analysis for this year, we believe we need to do some budget amendments at year end to record some additional revenue and the corresponding expenditures to make sure they do not go over budget. And so we're asking the board to approve the following budget amendments, and some of these do have project ordinances or budget ordinances for you to approve also. But that would be the Small Projects Fund, the Sheriff's Department Fund, Fines and Forfeitures Fund, Self-Insured Medical Fund, And then within the general fund, sales tax and ambulance billing revenue, which we turn that over to third parties. So asking the board to approve those budget amendments and the corresponding budget ordinances.
Okay, questions on that item? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, we move now to item 4.8, appointments to boards and committees. You all have a copy of those before you, which involves about I think we've got 9 or 10 different boards this month. Does anyone have any questions or comments on any of those items? All right, in that case, then we will move to item 4.9, NACO voting credentials for the 2024 annual conference. And we need a motion, of course, this could go on our consent agenda, to designate a voting delegate to represent Cabarrus County at the NACO annual conference in July. And who's signed up?
I don't think we've got anybody signed up.
Okay, I think I have signed up for that, but it's a little shaky. So if you want to designate me in the event that I'm present, I'm happy to fulfill that responsibility. What's the pleasure of the board? I see head nods. Okay. Very good. Then we move now to number 5, discussion items without action. Item 5.1 from Finance, refinancing of the draw program. And Jim Howden is back again.
Good evening, Commissioners, again. Again, this requires no action tonight. This is just for your information. As you're aware, the county will be looking to refinance current draw program, and we'll be doing that in July. And as part of that process, we need to have a public hearing, which we will hold on June 17th at your next meeting. And at that time, after that hearing, we'll ask for you to approve a resolution, so we may go for that financing. We're looking to refinance no more than $230 million, which would be part of paying off the current draw program and the purchase of the ACM building.
Questions on that item?
Will you repeat that last part? You said that we will be refinancing, you said to pay off?
The current draw program?
Okay. Right, but so we're refinancing the $230 million in debt.
It's actually $190 million in debt,
Okay.
and then $42 million for the ACM building.
Okay.
Roughly, that's rough estimates.
And now, who is this debt held with, the draw program?
Bank of America.
Okay. And so, do we refinance this every year? Or, I don't recall this being something before. How often do you try to refinance this debt?
We do, so the draw program is like a construction loan.
Okay.
And so we have every 2 to 3 years, part of the contract or the agreement, to go out for fixed financing on it.
Okay, I see.
And so basically, we're just converting it from temporary financing. Part of the courthouse is part of this,
Yeah, the courthouse.
of the completion.
Yes, some schools. I can go through, I've got the whole list that I could provide everybody.
I had a question marked about that in the proposed budget as far as the interest being paid on the courthouse. Can you address that while you're here? If I can.
I can try to.
Well, it's page 132 of our booklet. Under, the debt service for the courthouse, says the principals, I'm gonna round the numbers, 52 million, but it says interest, 24 million. And I was gonna ask, is that the total interest we've paid, or is that in a singular year?
You know what, Commissioner Meesmer, I'd have to go back and look for sure. I want to say that's for the whole project, but I don't know that for sure, top of my head.
Because it stood out to me compared, for instance, the schools, it says principal 181 million, and then interest is 47 million. Sheriff's Administrative Building, 4.8 million, interest is 229,000. And those all kind of seem in proportion. Then when I got to courthouse, it says the principal is 52 million and interest is 24.8 million.
Keep in mind that the courthouse is split between two financings. So a few years back, we had a draw program that paid for the beginning of the courthouse. That is fixed financing now. And the current portion is only interest payment because it is a draw program, a construction program. So everything we're paying right now is just interest.
So
And we're gonna change that over to fixed financing where we'll have principal and interest.
So is that the reason we've paid $24.8 million in interest?
That is probably a good reason, but I would definitely need to look into it more before I tell you incorrectly.
Okay, if you can let us know.
Yes, sir.
And why would it be higher than some of the others? For instance, if we wanted to if we use the drawdown what other projects on that list have we used for the drawdown program? Let's say the parking garage, 6.8 million is principal, 1.9 on interest. Was that a drawdown program? Or?
Unless it was the very first drawdown, it's not the current drawdown program. I do not know if it was used on the first one, which would have been 4 years ago, 6 years ago.
Okay. Well, I guess if you could send us that list.
Yes, we can break that down for you. Yes, sir.
Dig into this about why we're paying so much interest on the courthouse.
Yeah.
And if it's that split, maybe could you
Yeah,
give us
I
the
would
numbers?
be able to break it down, yes, sir, between what's fixed and what's the draw program.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? All right, then we will move to item 5.2, and that is for a general discussion of the budget. I think that maybe Rosh has some information to present, and then we can address any questions that might arise.
Good evening. What I'm going to try to present to you tonight is a overview of FY25 budget. Manager Downs presented the budget to you on May 20th, and I'm just going to provide you some additional details on what encompasses that budget. So on my agenda tonight is just briefly address the revenue neutral rate, the recommended rate, and then on the expense side, the major programs that encompass the changes between last year and this year. And then also a brief update on, not update, but some information on the fire districts and then the next steps. As far as the revenues go, as you know, there's been a lot of discussion about revenue neutral. What governs that is North Carolina General Statutes 15911E, and tells you how to calculate the rate. So the actual calculation, we take the current value, the FY24 valuation, and how much revenue it would generate. And then we take our revised valuation after reval, and figure out how much in taxes we would need to generate the same amount of revenue. That, according to statute, then is adjusted for growth, and we had a 3.76% growth over the last 3 years. the average growth, and that results in a revenue neutral rate of 52.65. This is the impact of the revenue neutral rate on a median value single-family home. In 2024, it was 217,000 valuation. 2025, 356, 139, 350 increase. At the current 74-cent rate, the taxes would be, in '24, the homeowner would have paid $1,605. In 2025, they would be paying $2,600, a $1,000 increase. At the revenue neutral rate, the amount would have been $1,605 versus $1,876, a $270 difference. And this is just the monthly and daily amount. The revenue neutral rate and what we would do to our current spending plan or expenditure plan. In FY25, if we adopted the 5265 rate, we would have to cut $22.7 million out of the budget to make it balance. As you know, by statute, we have to have a balanced budget. So looking at the deficits in 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, the manager recommended a rate that's different than that. We believe is adopting the revenue neutral rate would impact us very negatively.
How can that be? Can you explain that? If we're going revenue neutral, so the $22 million deficit would be if we go along with the expanded budget of the new proposal. So I want to make sure everybody's clear on this, that if we go revenue neutral and pull in the same amount of revenue that we pulled in last year, we should be able to fund the government as is. But with this presentation, the way it's being presented, that is, if we go revenue neutral, we'll have a $22 million deficit. But that $22 million deficit is based upon expanding the budget of the current proposal. So I want to make sure everybody's clear.
As I mentioned earlier, it is based on the current spending plan that's in the recommended budget. Yes. So the recommended rate is 60 cents in the recommended budget, and this is what it would do with the current spending plan. We would have a surplus of $11.3 million in 2025, a $3.6 million surplus in 2026. 2027, we would have a deficit of $4.2 million. In 2028, we would have a deficit of $10 million, and then we'll be up, 2029 would be our next reval year, based on a 4-year cycle. So under the recommended rate, the first 2 year surpluses would cover pretty much, for the most part, cover the deficits in 27 and 28.
And this slide here is also showing the proposed budget, is that correct?
That's correct.
So if we do revenue neutral and we bring in the county government brings in the same amount of money, and this is probably more towards Mike, but the county budget, if we go revenue neutral and we bring in the same amount of money as we did last year, well, actually, there's a natural growth increase in that from all the building that's taken place.
We've, just so that you know, we've built in a 3% growth.
Okay, for each year, okay. Which it probably ends up being a little bit more with all the building taking place. But, the deficits that you're showing in the upcoming years is based upon approving this spending plan. Yeah, okay.
All right, so the impact on a 60-cent tax rate on a medium value home would be $532, with the rate dropping from 74 cents to 60 cents. it would be a difference of $498 savings. When I say savings, it's still an increase, but it would be less than what it would have been at 74 cents.
So it's not a savings to the taxpayer. The 498 would be additional funds that they are then sending to the local government.
That is
So it's not a
correct.
savings. It's a check they're writing, or their mortgage payment will increase, or their
That is
rent
correct.
payment will increase. So it's not a savings. Okay.
Even at a revenue neutral rate, we had a $270 increase. Okay. These would be our revenues based on the recommended 60-cent rate. And all the different categories, sales tax, intergovernmental permits and fees. That's what's built into the plan, $51 million increase, about a 15% increase over last year. So now, looking at the expense side of it, we have to have a balanced budget. We've used the $51 million in the expense plan. $24.1 million is in our salaries and benefits. Educational partners got $11.2 million. Other partners got $1.9 million, and I'll get into the details of each of these. Other significant cost adjustments, $2.9 million. And the restricted reserve I talked about earlier, the surplus that we'll have in the first year, we're going to set it aside as a restricted reserve to be used to cover the deficits in the years where we need it. This is a breakdown in detail of each of the salary and benefit lines. I'm not going to get into each of those lines, but tell you what the highlights of those are. We just recently approved, the board recently approved the public safety market study, $10.6 million.
And from what I recall in our work session, whenever we had discussed that, that was going to be a $9 million figure. Was that correct?
It was, yeah, a little over $9 million. What's been added to that, we had almost 60 vacancies, and the vacancy cost was not included in there.
Okay. But also, that number does not reflect the reimbursements from the town of Harrisburg, town of Midland.
They will not be reimbursing us this year. That reimbursement
Right.
will start next year.
But, so that brings that
In-
number down significantly, correct?
In FY '26 it will, not in '25.
So in FY '25, it'll be 10.6.
That's correct.
Okay. And I voted for the increase for the salaries for the police and EMS, and I was happy to do so. I felt that was necessary, but from my understanding in that meeting, it was going to be 9 million, and then with cutting out some of the overtime that was having to happen, and also the reimbursement of the town, those numbers would come down. But I understand what you're saying now, that it's,
Based on our contracts with them, the timing of our public safety market study and when we had to give them the numbers for next year did not work out. So that's why we approached Harrisburg with it, and Midland and Mount Pleasant, and all of their contracts asked for us to, the new contract asked for us to provide them the information by March with Harrisburg, but the other ones require us to provide them information in January. So for FY '25, we are not able to assess that amount.
okay. And so none of that was told to us at that workshop meeting when we voted on it. Is
Well, I
that
think-
correct, Mike?
I'm sorry.
Is that correct, Mike? Because I don't remember that discussion at all.
You mean the contracts?
No, the contracts we discussed is,
Discussed, or the variation of the timing of?
yeah, the variation of the time and all that was not brought up. Okay.
I had asked the same question previously, and I got the impression that when we initially talked about it, that is correct. The assumption was that the municipalities would pick up their share of the increases on the salary study. I don't think anybody was aware that the contract did not demand that. I think they were given the opportunity to voluntarily do that, and to the best of my knowledge, they've declined.
We have a $2 million adjustment that was based on a adjustment to the social services and general government salaries that was approved late last year. So this is the annualized cost of it. Medicaid expansion, we added $2.1 million in positions, about 30 positions were added.
I better ask the questions while they're here, because the 2.1 million in the Medicaid expansion, now, this is from the state's expansion of adoption to expand Medicaid, is that correct?
That is correct. There is revenue. 75% of it will be coming back to us, and that's on the revenue end of it.
So it won't be 2.1 million, is that correct?
But yes, that's correct.
Okay. I mean, one that balances out.
We should have about 1.5 million revenue coming to us, so the difference would be the net cost for us.
And so I remember when the legislator voted on expanding Medicaid, that it was going to be zero cost to the counties. But I guess we see that that is not the truth. If we're only getting 75% reimbursement. So I guess they did not give us accurate information because it was sold as that it was not going to cost the counties any money. I know you have nothing to do with that, but I have to.
The Afton Mount Pleasant positions, they were built into the budget last year, but they were built in as a transfer to the CIF fund as a one-time cost, so we could use it for deferred maintenance and stuff. They're being brought back into the salary and benefit lines. The annual COLA and merit pay, $2.3 million. The 25 new positions that are included in the recommended budget, $1.9 million. And then the other costs, we have retirement rate, health care, 401K, all of those get impacted by whatever we do to the salaries. Looking at our educational partners, we added $11.2 million to their budgets. Cabarrus County Schools will get $8.5 million. Kannapolis City Schools, $1.1 million. The charter schools, $1.2 million. Rowan Cabarrus Community College, $268,000. The major items that make up their increases, there was a continuation request from Cabarrus County Schools of $4.1 million. Every time you fund them, you have to provide per ADM funding to Kannapolis City Schools and the charter schools, and you see the impact of it. Two of their high-priority expansion items were also included in the recommended budget. The number one item they had was classified staff salary study, $2.6 million, because they're facing the same kind of issues that most employers are facing, keeping employees. And then the other one was the increase in teacher supplements by 1%. That's been included in the recommended budget. So that would take their teacher supplement from 12 to 13%. So those are the major items in their request.
Which positions are their classified staff? Is that like the bus mechanics,
Yeah.
things like that?
I think most of the positions that are not instructional.
Okay.
The other partners we have are the Cabarrus Health Alliance. They had an annual budget, their normal continuation budget increase of about $800,000, and then what was added to that were 4 nurse assistant positions that were currently being funded by a grant that is going away. But what we've learned from them is that they're critical to the schools, that the nurse assistants were positions that they felt would be beneficial for the schools to continue to have. So those 4 positions are included in the $1.1 million. We have economic incentive grants, $200,000, fire district sales tax, $41,000 increase, City of Kannapolis debt and MSD. This is where I think we're funding their downtown revitalization.
Can we get a little explanation on that? Which that might be better coming from Mike. This City of Kannapolis and our payment to them. Can you explain that?
Excuse me, so I'm not sure what year we're in right now, but back when the city of Kannapolis was looking to redesign or redo the downtown and to provide the opportunity for it to grow and become vital again, the commissioners agreed to assist with that process. And so that's municipal service district. So what happens was there was a flat rate, a tax rate or a tax income at that time, a tax value. So anything as they started to make improvements or grow forward, they were reimbursed for a portion of that back, and that's what this cost is.
They were reimbursed, or we are relinquishing our property tax revenues to the city of Kannapolis for
Yeah,
that?
so it would, I believe it was a 15%, 85%.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would keep any, so it was always growth on the ARB side of it was a 15% growth. However, the 85% of that growth was going back to the Kannapolis.
So 85% of our property tax revenue in that area is being turned over to the city of Kannapolis, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
I think it's 85% of the increase that has
Increase,
occurred
yes.
during that period. And those funds primarily were designated for water and sewer and infrastructure projects that, had they not been done, that growth could not have occurred.
Which is the responsibility of the city of Kannapolis, considering the county government's not involved in water and sewer. So we're relinquishing $2 million a year in property tax to the city of Kannapolis. I just
Well,
wanted to,
I think that's really not a fair way to state that. I think that we looked at a declining tax base, which had occurred in downtown Kannapolis. And the city came to us with a plan as to how to turn that around and take it from a declining tax base to an increasing tax base. So the revenue that we receive from that area has grown significantly during that period of time because of that investment that you see on the screen.
so our benefit is relinquishing back that additional tax revenue to them.
No, our benefit is getting 15% of all that new growth that would not have occurred if we had not cooperated with the city to make it happen.
Well, it's great to cooperate, but whenever we're relinquishing our tax revenue, how many times has one of the municipalities relinquished their property tax revenue to the county? How many times has that happened? I can't ever think of one. So, certainly, City of Kannapolis, the downtown needed revitalization. I don't disagree with that one bit. And of course, we want to encourage that, and we want to see that, but I just want a little clarification on that line item. Thank you.
We can give you the historical schedule of how that all happened and what money has changed over the years, so.
The other big one here is there's a reduction of $150,000 for Partners Health Management. And what that is we had estimated the bottle tax last year to be $350,000, but the actual numbers are coming in around $200,000, so we dropped that both on the revenue and expense side. City of Concord interlocal agreement, that's again has to do with City of Concord's downtown revitalization. The Arts Council contract went up, or their contribution went up by $1,000 for them. They were at $26,000 before, it's now $27,000 at their request.
Screen just disappeared.
Oh, okay. That one's gone off. All right, here are some of the other significant cost adjustments. We have power and natural gases went up by $729,000. Most of this has to do with the new facilities that we're adding, Afton, and then also the EMS facility, the ITS facility, and so forth. All the new buildings that we're adding. Purchase services went up by $2.2 million. That again has a lot to do with new facilities, but also our normal cost increases with all the contracts we have, including for the IT department and then also infrastructure asset management's contracts and so forth. Technology, office equipment and furniture, $718,000. Minor technology equipment, $329,000. Vehicle replacements, these are not new vehicles, but replacing of vehicles on a cycle. A low-income energy assistance program, the state is now taking over payments that we were previously handling. A contribution to the pension trust fund went down by $2 million. That was one that was discussed at the retreat, where we were providing a $2 million amount to our pension trust fund, and the consensus was to discontinue that, at least for now. Contribution to our CIF fund, remember I mentioned the Afton positions. Last year we had one-time infusion of $3.2 million in the budget. That's being reduced. What's being added to the budget, contributions to CIF, we've suspended for 1 year insurance and bonds contributions since our self-insurance fund has a sufficient fund balance, and we didn't see it necessary to add additional dollars to that for 1 year. So this is a 1 year suspension of those dollars. And so we're using those dollars as a contribution to the CIF fund, so it can be used for one-time deferred maintenance type of expenditures. And I'll come back into the budget next year. Another contribution to CIF is for future economic incentive grants. We already know we have those payments coming. For example, one big one would be Lilly. So those are kind of built into that $1.8 million number. We're not going to have to pay it this year. So those dollars have been reserved in the budget and as a transfer to the CIF fund, so we can use it for one-time needs. Also, we have countywide expansion items of $656,000. That includes about $210,000 in vehicles, new vehicles, and the balance of it is other items. So that concludes my presentation on the general fund budget, just to give you an idea. What I'd like to discuss with you now is the fire districts. At the workshop we had with the fire districts, you all heard what their proposed rates were. I just wanted to put that into context as far as this was their adopted rate in FY24. The revenue neutral rate in FY25 is that. And the proposed rate that's been built into the recommended budget is 1.6, or, versus, and you can see the revenues here. They were generating about $7 million. They'll be generating about $9.5 million. And you heard from each of them making their case of why they needed the proposed rate. Next steps, we had our public hearing today. We have a budget meeting if needed June 6th, and then the budget adoption would be June 17th. Any questions?
Additional questions for Rosh on any of these items? Okay, well, thank you for that presentation. I think that we have time allocated for general discussion of the budget if anybody needs. And then I think one of the things we need to decide whether we sort of had a placeholder on the Thursday budget workshop. If the majority of the board felt like they needed additional time to sit down in a group and discuss it, we've got that on the calendar that's available to us. If you do not, then we do not have to schedule that. So does anybody have anything additional they'd like to discuss regarding the budget at this time?
I got a few questions going, reading over this book. And just some simple questions. On page 60, under expenditures by function, it says non-departmental. It's at the bottom. And last year's budget was 5.6, and then this year it has increased to 17.5. And I was just curious if things have been moved from a different line item to that, or what?
I think the big change is the $11 million that's been set aside as restricted reserve. That's included in there.
Okay, and so where was that last year then?
It wasn't there. Remember, this is the restricted reserve that we're going to, the additional revenue we're going to generate. We have to place it somewhere in the budget to balance the budget.
I see. Okay, I understand that. And then, let's see here. Now, explain to me, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the city of Kannapolis. Explain to me the $100,000 for the city of Concord. And how did that come about? I don't think I was here when that was decided upon.
Where are you at?
Page 82. And it was on the screen earlier when we were having the discussion about the,
Mike, I believe that 100,000 has to do with the grounds at Concord, where we did the sewer infrastructure.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, there, and I don't know, I don't have all the exact numbers, but in order to continue to attract economic development on the site out there, there was an extension of water and sewer lines, or just sewer lines.
Yeah.
And the county is participating in that cost. Concord installed it, and the county, I believe, is paying a portion of that back to them.
I believe it was $100,000 for 5 years.
Right.
so 500,000 we're paying to the city of Concord
over a
for
5-year
utilities.
period, yeah.
Or, okay. I guess I'd like to get to the question about, well, first, you know, reading over this, I think what stands out to me the most is that there's the proposed debt to be taken out in this budget. And so I would like some explanation on why it seems like we're trying to throw all the debt into this one budget cycle. Is it $350 million?
Yeah, I don't have the information in front of me with all the different projects, but those have been planned for several years now.
Right, and so we go through this each year. We have, you know, items that we see that are coming along, and maybe they don't have a date in particular when they're going to be put into a budget. But it seems like in this proposed budget, everything was thrown into that proposed budget. I've never seen one budget cycle have $350 million in debt proposed in one singular budget cycle.
Right, and I don't have it in front of me, so we can talk about it.
I mean, that seems, as I said, that was pretty striking to me. I think last year was a little over 100 million something, but then this year, and I'm not saying that these projects don't need to be accomplished at some point, but to put $350 million of debt in one budget cycle, I've not seen that. That is unprecedented, and I feel like it's an attempt to tie the hands of a future board that's coming in. We're going to have 2 new members on this board, and by taking out that amount of debt in one budget cycle year, we'll tie the hands of a future board that will get to make these decisions. And it will be going as a time where 2 members of this board are going off, and potentially you're retiring. And so it's running up the credit card or mortgaging the county in debt, tying the hands of a future board.
We can have those conversations tomorrow, and we can pull out the detail, and we can go from there.
Yeah, I've seen the projects.
Okay.
Like
Well,
I said, I'm not.
We can sit there and talk about that, and as of that, I have never made any retirement date
Yeah,
name
well, I
for
know you
myself,
haven't,
so,
but,
okay.
I mean, as I said, it just seems unusual that we were gonna pile all that into this one singular budget cycle, but, that was my initial reaction of it. You know, it's, you know, this reevaluation, you know, we have discussed this multiple times, the reevaluation, and when I first came on the board 2 years ago, that was one of the first things I said is we need to hold off that reevaluation. And everybody looked at me like I had two heads, and then we got into the situation with the reevaluation. And I'm not saying that, as I said before, I'm not saying that property values are not gonna increase. I understand that, but we did the reevaluation at the highest time in the market. And now we have a situation where some folks' houses are valued higher than what they can actually sell it for. The tax value is gonna be higher than what they can actually sell it for. And so, you know, we've come into this situation, and, you know, it seems like we ought to let the dust settle for a little while on the reevaluation. And there's going to be a lot of people out there that cannot afford a tax increase. And we're going to end up in a situation where we have delinquent property taxes, bills that are owed. And then here, in this one budget cycle, taking out $350 million in debt, it just doesn't seem like the smartest strategy, in my opinion.
Other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none, then we will move to the approval of the regular meeting agenda. You all have a copy of that in front of you. I am not aware of any actions that we took tonight that would change any of those items. Does anyone else see anything? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the regular meeting agenda and schedule the necessary public hearings. We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. We do have need of a closed session tonight. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to go into closed session as authorized by North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A and 5 regarding the acquisition of real property. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. And we are now in closed session. Thank you all for joining us tonight.